after that issue at least 2 separate times.
So many Russia questions to talk about with our panel that are here with me now. Joining me, former DNC Chair Governor Howard Dean, CNBC Editor-at-Large John Harwood, and former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, and former Rand Paul staffer Brian Darling, founder of Liberty Government Affairs. It's good to have you all here. Governor Dean, let me just dive in with you first on this. Do you believe Don Jr. now coming clean, because originally this was not the first tale he told about why this meeting was set up with the attorney. Now we understand and have it confirmed from him that this was to get dirt on Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I don't believe that either. But there's a lot of things that are clearly not true. The first is that Mr. Trump, President Trump, had no idea that this was going on. If his campaign manager, his son-in-law, and his son were in this meeting, to think that Donald Trump didn't know anything about this meeting is ridiculous. Second of all, this lady is very close to the FSB, which is the follow-on to the security service, the KGB, from the old Soviet times. So the idea that she is some person that's going to spread dirt about Hillary Clinton, this is also bupkis. Third, the most interesting thing is Reince Priebus, I think, just earned himself a subpoena because what he said isn't true either, and he's now going to be put under oath. All three of these folks are going to have to say this under oath to Bob Mueller, and if they do, they're probably going to be convicted of perjury eventually.
All right, so here's the other interesting nugget that we get out of this, John, is the official Don Jr. statement saying, I was asked to have a meeting by an acquaintance I knew from the 2013 Miss Universe pageant with an individual who I was told might have information helpful to the campaign. I was not told her name prior to this meeting. And the interesting part is, I was with Donald Trump Sr. in 2013 in Moscow, John, for the Miss Universe event that NBC had there. I don't recall seeing Don Jr. in Moscow, but it was there at that time in an interview with the president where he said to me that he did personally have a relationship with Vladimir Putin. But now Don Jr. is saying that this is through an acquaintance I knew from the 2013 Miss Universe pageant. Again, that was held in Moscow. Do you think that Don Jr. is really telling the truth about the connective tissue here? And as the governor is pointing out, that Donald Trump could be unaware that such a meeting was happening?
Thomas, I don't see how any reasonable person could believe what Donald Trump Jr. has said. First of all, he initially, when the New York Times interviewed him this March, said he couldn't recall any meeting with Russians. He said, oh, I'm sure I met with some, but nothing that was set up, none that I recall at the moment. Then yesterday, after the Times got this story, what he said was, well, we discussed adoption. It was somebody that I didn't know what they were, who the person was. Somebody asked me to have a meeting. I had a meeting. Now he's saying that he had a meeting on the explicit understanding that he was going to get damaging information about Hillary Clinton from the Russians. You also have a statement from Jared Kushner, who said that Donald Trump Jr. had asked him to attend the meeting. Now, if you were Donald Trump Jr. and you think this is an insignificant meeting, why would you ask Paul Manafort and Jared Kushner to attend? In addition to what Governor Dean just said about the lack of believability of the idea that Donald Trump, who was the candidate, would not be told by his campaign manager, his son-in-law, or his son about a meeting to get damaging information about his opponent.
But isn't there a case to be made for being blissfully ignorant, Brian, when it comes to what a Paul Manafort or Jared Kushner know? The statement also goes on from Don Jr. to say, I asked Jared and Paul to attend, but told them nothing of substance, as if they should come, but you know, it remains to be seen exactly what we're going to get. We know that Kushner had to document this for his security clearance filings. Paul Manafort also had to document this and has had to register as a foreign agent, just legally doing that last month. Don Jr. has no security clearance, so he did not have to provide any information about this. But how troubling is this in the larger scope of things with the special prosecutor investigation?
Well, to me, it's not troubling at all. I believe Donald Trump Jr. You look at the story, it's based on confidential sources. It hasn't been confirmed. We don't know how true it is. But what we do know, if you believe the story, is that this appeared to be a bait and switch. What happened is they promised damaging information, proving collusion between the Russians and Hillary Clinton. The Russians and the Democratic National Committee, they took the meeting, and it turned out to be a bait and switch where they wanted to pitch on relaxing Russia's sanctions in consideration for allowing Russian adoptions. And it appeared that, one of the stories indicates that Kushner walked out of the meeting, Manafort walked out of the meeting early, and they probably all walked out saying, wow, we really got fooled. They tried to fool us on that. So when you look at the big picture, does this prove collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians? No. It actually was an attempt by the Trump campaign to prove collusion between Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Russians.
Well, I think that's a big leap to make right now, especially when we've gotten several yarns from the main source involved here, Donald Trump Jr., Brian. He is the source that has given this statement about having asked by an acquaintance, we don't know who that acquaintance is, that I knew from the 2013 Miss Universe pageant with an individual who might have information helpful to the campaign. I asked Jared and Paul to attend, but nothing of substance. Also, he goes on to say that she changed subjects, began discussion of the adoption of Russian children, and mentioned the Magnitsky Act. Joyce, he then goes on to say the meeting lasted about 20 to 30 minutes. My father knew nothing of the meeting or these events. How much legal trouble is Don Jr. in now when it comes to being on the radar of Bob Mueller?
So it looks like Trump Jr. is now engaging in what prosecutors call incremental truth-telling. When you have a problem that you're sitting on top of, you tell just as much as you think you have to tell to put yourself into the clear. And then you tell a little bit more and a little bit more. I think that there's no doubt that Bob Mueller's team is sitting up and taking interest in Trump Jr.'s statements. They will need to investigate thoroughly, both to see whether there's potential criminal exposure and also to dissect Russian tradecraft so that they can be of aid to FBI and other agencies in preventing more of this type of activity in the future. It's tempting to get ahead of yourself when you see this sort of information leaking. But so much in Trump Jr.'s demeanor in this case, the way he denies and then tells a little bit at a time, and none of it really makes sense, even to the point of we're hearing 3 key people in the Trump campaign are going to this meeting that they don't know who they'll meet with. They don't know what the topic is. We're still not at the end of this one.
No, the timeline is just kind of crystallizing for 2016, as we all recall, with the DNC and Podesta being hacked in the spring, this meeting happening 2 weeks after Donald Trump sealed the nomination for the Republican Party in June, and also none of this being public information until both Kushner and Manafort had to make these amended statements about their interactions with the Russians. John, real quickly, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it doesn't make any, as Donald Trump Jr.'s own statement says, it makes no sense to talk about collusion between Hillary Clinton and the Russians. The Russians were interfered in our election, according to our intelligence agencies, to help Donald Trump get elected. He was elected. Now he is acting in a friendly manner toward Vladimir Putin. And I think you can't lose sight of the basics here, and this is one more element that fills in and raises questions about exactly what the relationship was between the Trump campaign and the Russians before the election.
Well, and we didn't have that type of intel information until the fall, prior to the election, about the intel assessment on all of this. But we do have candidate Trump's statements during which time he encouraged Russia to hack in, get Hillary Clinton's lost 30,000 emails. Panel, I'm going to ask you to stay with me because we've got a lot to unpack, but I want to bring in now Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters.